hey. Save a little bit of it till later, will you, for Bryce's sake? My name is Dick Martin, and I'm an alcoholic. Everybody, but for the grace of God and the actions and a sponsor at Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been sober since September the 15th, 1965, and I'm very pleased about that.
And I'm Peggy Martin, and I'm an alcoholic. And through the grace of God and fellowship of people and sponsorship, I've been sober since February the 4th, 1964, which made me sober longer than him.
And never lets me forget it.
No.
You know, we were talking at lunch. We were sitting with Peg's sponsor and a gal that Peg sponsors, and we're sitting there, and Peg says, you know, doing this thing kind of reminds me, she said, I think we're kind of an elderly Ken and Barbie. When I said, oh, God, I hope not. And I said, I don't mind being elderly, but I would not like to be considered Ken and Barbie. In the first place, just to give you some, if you're new to us, which some of you are, we'll be married 22 years, August 12th this year. We, after having our first date on June the 6th, 1966, we got married a few weeks later. It wasn't a whirlwind courtship or anything like that. Don't want to give you the wrong impression. She wasn't pregnant.
No. Couldn't have been.
Everybody. We believe in courtship, even if they are short courtship. Ours was not a marriage that was made in heaven. It was boy meets girl on AA campus, and we went from there. We have a good marriage. We're not wonderful. She's not wonderful. I mean, I'm not wonderful. We liberally take each other's inventories at the most inappropriate time. Usually when the other one is sensitive.
Yeah.
The conversation usually starts out with, I'm going to take your inventory now. I mean, we even let each other know that it's going to be hell for a few minutes. But our relationship is a good relationship and a substantial relationship because of one very simple thing. And the simple thing is that we have put AA first in our lives. We have put the fellowship and the program and the ideals and the ideas of Alcoholics Anonymous first in our lives. That comes before, as I'm concerned, it comes before Peggy comes along. It comes before anything else comes along. That's first. And I was taught early on that it's very wise to get into the fellowship before you attempt to get into a relationship. I was also taught that you shouldn't get into a relationship, an emotional relationship, within the first year that you're sober. Now, mind you, if your arithmetic is working very good, I wasn't quite sober 11 months when we got married. And ours was not an emotional relationship. We did not get emotionally involved. It was based on lust until September the 15th. Now, she had been sober long enough, but I hadn't, so mine was just lust until September the 15th of that year, and then I began to develop an emotional relationship because that's the only way to do it. I got married. We were talking about getting married someday, and she said, how about next week?
Friday.
Yep, how about next Friday? And I thought, my God, that's a little quick, but, you know, I thought I was talking about December, and she thought that was too far off, and which was fine. And I said, but we can't do it until I get in touch with my sponsor. And she said, why? And I said, because I promised myself that I wasn't going to make any major decisions in my life without talking to my sponsor first. And my sponsor was out of town at a convention, and I knew where he was, but I didn't know what hotel he was in. But I called his home and talked to his daughter, and his daughter told me, and I dialed the hotel in El Paso, Texas. And he happened to be in his room. And I told him I was thinking about getting married. And he says, who are you thinking about marrying? Peggy? And I said, yeah. And he said, yes, it'll be okay because she's been sober longer than you have. And he said, he warned me right at the very beginning. And I'm the cruder one of the two up here. You'll hear some nicer things from her. He warned me at the very beginning. He said, Alcoholics Anonymous is in meetings in church basements. It comes in groups. And he said, when you all stay at home and talk about the 12 steps and the 12 traditions and all that sort of thing, that is not AA. It's ass to ass.
I understand.
Don't be insulted by it.
No.
He said, if you want to stay sober and continue to grow in your life, you'll go to AA meetings. When you go to meetings, if it's a discussion meeting, you'll sit at one table and she'll sit at the other. If it's a speaking meeting, you go and you stick with the guys and let her stick with the gals. It even gets to the point where the majority of the time when we go to a meeting, she takes her car and I take my car. I mean, we don't even go to meetings or come back to home with each other. It seems to me that frequently we oftentimes end up meeting in bed. And that's not a bad place. So and speaking of Jim, he was a little brown nose there, so I wouldn't take his inventory from the podium. When he's defenseless, he always hates that when I do that. I told him the other day, we were talking about doing this, and I told him the other day, I said, you're one of those people that that Peggy and I have never really sat down and talked to you and Amy about your relationship. I said, you must have learned about it before you got married. And I think that they did. I think that they learned about it before they got married. Not that everybody doesn't need a tune-up every now and then, but very simply, they get along well. They get along well, and I think they get along well because his wife is active in Al-Anon and lives her program, and he is active in AA and he lives his program. And I think it works very well that way. I don't think that I need to go to Al-Anon to live with you.
I don't think so either.
Strange way to turn it over, isn't it?
One of the things that I think that we had noticed through the years, and I'd like to say this, we, as Dick said, we don't have a perfect marriage. Whenever I hear anyone from the podium talk about how they have a perfect marriage, I'm a little bit suspect of that, because when you've got two alcoholics or an alcoholic and a person that suffers from Al-Anonism together in a house, you've got two complete characters there. I mean, there is nothing boring about us. We have these exaggerated emotions. We're like, I always liked drinking because it turned black and white TV into color, and it right in front of my eyes. And I think that's kind of the way our relationships are. They're really in full technicolor. If we finally cross over the hump and decide that we're going to give ourselves to somebody, we do it. And I mean, we do it probably to our own detriment at times. And what that does is that it makes for a very interesting combination of things and an interesting situation in the household. And one of the things that we noticed was through the years of having lived together and fought together, and I was so grateful we didn't have a fight today, because it's hard to get up here and talk about traditions in relationships when you're mad at one. So we've been we've been really nice
It
with
isn't
him.
over yet.
No, the day's not over. The day isn't over yet, and we may do it right up here. You never know. But, one of the things that we noticed was that really, when we applied the principles in Alcoholics Anonymous in our lives, in our married lives, that we really had been doing that. It's kind of like we're not smart or anything. We just kind of bumbled along and made a lot of mistakes. And I was reading AA Comes of Age one time, and I thought, these battles and things that they had in the groups and stuff sounds like Dick and I. It sounds like the battles that we've had, the ego deflation that we have had, the struggles and the pulling this way and that, and the competition and all of that sort of thing within the family. It sounds like us. And it occurred to me that those problems that we had worked out, the way they had been worked out, was by using the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there is no place that these are embodied than they are in the traditions. The traditions, and it was a long time before I realized this, because I'm kind of dumb anyway about this kind of thing. I'm not supposed to be, but I seem to be emotionally kind of dumb about these things. It occurred to me that every single one of the traditions was ego deflation at depth. It really had something to do with ego, which led to the second logical conclusion, and that was that I, as an alcoholic, must have a problem with ego in some fashion or another, that I'm always having to get deflated. Now, I never knew how to be a true partner to anybody. Did you really, when you were drinking? I was always a loner. I was alone inside. I was alone in the crowd. I was a loner. I was so scared. I was so scared to let you have my feelings, because I was afraid if you took my feelings that you were going to hurt me bad. And I'm not speaking of you, but the world at large. And so what I did was I medically sealed myself. I took a little can of Teflon spray and sprayed it all the way around my emotions, and I used men just like I used toilet paper. No, not exactly. Not exactly.
I think maybe I ought to study this for a while.
Studied it.
I'll go over here.
Oh, studied it. Not exactly toilet paper, but something disposable. Something you can just...
That'll...
Just be quiet now. I'm just trying to get myself out of this. They were useful as long as I was not involved with them. You understand? I mean, I never thought of myself as having relationships with people because I didn't give a damn about them. And I thought you had to give a damn about somebody to have a relationship with them. And I think that's true. You got one way or the other. You might have a hate relationship with somebody, but you got some feeling about them. I never had any feeling. I mean, I was sealed, and I just went about my business that way. And he was the first person. Well, I was going with this guy who was a postman, and he kissed funny. It hurt when he kissed, and said, what? I didn't want to date him too frequently. But he got drunk and went crazy and commandeered an ambulance and barricaded himself inside his house with a double-barrel shotgun, so I figured that one was over. Thank goodness I wasn't around. So then I met him, and he was so persistent. He was irritating. He was everything I didn't think I wanted. I'd always said to my mother, I'm going to marry a professional man. I'm going to marry somebody tall and dark. I'm going to marry somebody who has never been married before. And I'm going to marry somebody that is sort of romantic. Well, I did marry a romantic. He is a romantic. But he's not tall and dark. He's kind of built like an outhouse, with blonde hair. He's sturdy, very sturdy. He's a salesman, which is a profession, I suppose. And
the only thing I have to say about that, it kept you from starving.
You bet. Good living. Salesman, he'd been married before, and he had kids by this other marriage. This was not unacceptable to me. So to prove to you just exactly how unacceptable it was, I married him 2 months after I had the first date with him. I told my mother. She said, what about this Martin fellow? He was getting me boxes because I was moving. And she said, what about this Martin fellow? And I said, yeah, he's a nice guy. It's too bad it'll never last. Well, that was 22 years ago. So it just shows you I wasn't really with it. So we looked at things and we just decided, that that's what had been happening in our lives. And we decided to kind of go through them just on a lark to see how much they fit. And that's how this sort of came about. It was in hindsight. And I, to really get into it, I had to allow this man who was persistent and irritating and always there. He was always there. And he was always so nice. I figured he had to have something up his sleeve. And I know.
More than something she had.
Yeah, she did.
I was willing to go to any lengths to get it.
He was willing to go to any lengths to get it, but he was even ready to take certain steps at that point. A little bit further on, he was ready to take certain steps. But he wanted to put off the steps till December or something, and I had found at my night in shining armor, and I wanted to whisk him off in he had bought a new car. He had a Ford Falcon with bourbon bumps all over it, and it had stains in the front seat.
Somebody had urinated
in the front seat.
On the front seat on the driver's side.
But it wasn't me. So he traded in his...
I'm the only one that drove it, but...
He traded in his Ford Falcon, and he got a Pontiac, but gold Pontiac, Bonneville, Pontiac, whatever, convertible, which cost us more than our child support payments.
And alimony.
And alimony, right. To keep the thing.
I bought that the afternoon of June the 6th, 1966, by the way. I bought that the same afternoon that I had a date with Peggy, our first date that night. I wasn't trying to impress her with material values.
Oh.
Nothing grandiose.
Anyway, so, and we ended up getting married, and these experiences, some of the experiences that we're going to share with you for a little while this afternoon are the good and the bad, because I've got to say this right off the bat. I love this man. I love him for everything that he is and the way that I feel when I am around him most of the time. But
you're shorter than I am. You may be sober longer, but...
So, but nothing stays wonderful forever. Nothing stays terrible forever. And I expected to go into marriage, into this relationship, and that it would be bluebirds of happiness. I never figured they'd crap on me from time to time. It was part of my adjustment to reality. It was part of, I had just the same unreal expectations of this relationship as I did of everything else in my life. It was going to be marvelous. And it has been marvelous. But there had been times that have been interspersed that it hasn't been so marvelous. And sometimes the terrible times, the really bad times, are not as hard to live through as just the times. Just day after day after day. Just living together day by day by day. And that's hard. That's the hardest part, is to living when there's no thrill attached to it. Where you're just there. And I love this man. I respect him. I respect him most for his membership in Alcoholics Anonymous and the way that he is able to deal with the people that he deals with. One time we were thinking about characters, the different things that made people up and what we admired about people. And she said, what do you admire about Dick? Well, I said, he's a great AA member and he's a good visitor. She said, a visitor? That's not very good. I said, yes, it is for somebody who is a non-visitor. I'm a non-visitor. I mean, you got to have a purpose. You want to visit with me? State your purpose. I'm busy. Dick will sit and visit with you for hours. He is so good. He comes from a long line of North Carolina porch sitters. He could just sit and visit. And he's so patient. He is much more patient than I. So, the first tradition says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity.
It also means that personal recovery depends upon the unity of the relationship, and that has to come first. The idea of staying together has to come first. That means the commitment for one person to stay with another, regardless of whether it's marriage or whatever it happens to be, whether it's simple friendship. It really doesn't make any difference, but there has to be a commitment to be where you are. It has to be a commitment on both sides. Both individuals have to be committed to be there, and they have to be committed on a daily basis. It isn't something that you say, oh, well, I'm going to be married forever, or like my first wife told me. She said, well, if this doesn't work out, we can always get a divorce. I didn't expect the marriage to last very long after that remark, and it really didn't. But the point I'm trying to bring across, without commitment to be there, it isn't going to stay. And that commitment has to be on a daily basis. Some days you have to do it at a moment at a time. I was sober, maybe not sober. We were married maybe 6 months, and I remember making an AA talk and said, the fortunate thing I've come to realize is that I'm only married to her at a time. And I thought how wonderful that was of me, until later on I began to realize that she was only married to me a day at a time too. And, I get a little wonderful in my ideas of thinking how wonderful I am in this whole deal occasionally. And, or frequently. Doesn't make any difference which one it is. I feel somewhat martyred occasionally on a daily basis, but it's only a brief period of time, fortunately. And I don't try to hang myself up and do an Easter bit too often, but I do occasionally. And I believe that I observe her hanging in the shadow also occasionally.
Yeah.
But we only have to do that. We only have to live together a day at a time. And if things get too serious, we don't even have to do that, because I can get up and go out and I can go to a meeting, or I can call a guy a sponsor. I can go have lunch with somebody. I can get away from her easy, and in a principled manner, and legitimately and honestly, I can do that without hurting her feelings or without making her look less.
And another good trick on this one is about the unity business is I have always thought of this. Whenever, in public, now this is in public, we may have differences and we can disagree privately, but I try very hard not to say bad things to other people about my husband in public. And that's not a phony thing. It's just that it gets to be a joke. You get carried away with it. At least I do. And I don't find that it's really their business what my personal disagreements with him are, except perhaps with my sponsor. But not in general, because it becomes a habit to jokingly put somebody down. And I always think of it as in private when we disagreements, I never knew this. I went all through my life not knowing this, and it's so simple. You can disagree without being disagreeable. Because see, to me, it was always a personal attack. Because I always felt I had so little self-worth that anytime anybody said anything that was a disagreement with me, it made me feel less than. And so it was personal. I've learned that we can disagree without being disagreeable. It is not a personal attack. It is not a character assassination. We can disagree without being disagreeable and still have that unity. I always like to think of when we get into these discussions at home about whatever it manages to be, a lot of topics, I always think of a newcomer standing at my shoulder. And how would I behave for that newcomer standing at my shoulder? I'm sure it's going to behave the way I do behave sometimes when I get upset, which is he is a very stoic person. He's quiet and deadly. He'll get you, in ways that are so effective. And I am the blithering idiot type that just blows like I always, 24 hours later, I always think I could have said this and it would have been so effective, you know, but I just, right then I'm going, I don't know, but I don't like your face at all, or how do you go, you know, I just, here, or, whatever. And, if I wouldn't act like that if I had a new person there.
Actually, while she's doing that, she thinks I'm being stoic, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm sitting there saying quietly in my mind, but never out loud, just keep it up, bitch, I'll get you later.
Those are things that are better left unsaid.
That has no purpose in a true partnership.
It really doesn't. I mean, it's effective, but
It makes things exciting.
yeah, it does. So
So the object is not to feed someone when when someone is feeling bad. Don't feed them either. Don't give them anything don't put fertilizer on the situation. There's no sense making, when you're wrong, say you're wrong. Hey, I was wrong. I'll try to do better.
oh, it just irritates me when he does that. It's irritating.
Yes, but it's AA and she can't do anything about
And
it.
that's worse. It's worse because then I have to act principled, and that's hard sometimes.
The one thing that I have learned more than I have learned anything else is that I never have to tell her I'm sorry. And I don't use that word at all. I don't use the word sorry. I never tell her I'm sorry. I absolutely, because I find oftentimes I do things that are wrong, but I get a delight out of doing it. And I'm really not sorry for the fact that I've done them. Matter of fact, I'm damn glad that I did them, but I'm sorry I got caught.
But he does say he's good at saying he's wrong. He was good at saying he was wrong right from the beginning. He was. And I was never good at saying that I was wrong or really even sorry because I have basically kind of a little nasty personality. I'm just a little nasty thing there. And he's really been more honest from the beginning. Now, I like to think that I have, developed quickly along those lines, and so we're sort of on a par. But in the beginning, I admired him for that. I admired him for his honesty. And I would tell him that. And we'll get into talking about attaboys later on. The second tradition says, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. This is one of my favorites because I need it so badly. Because I figure that I just have this innate sense that I'm the boss. My father he retired as a lieutenant general from the Air Force, and he was the Surgeon General of the Air Force, and he was a graduate engineer as well. He was used in the military, and he was used to getting his way. And Dick always calls me General when I get sort of bossy, because it reminds me how much like my father I am. I just have this sense of being right, and that if they would all just do things my way. And you know what ragging is, where you just get to ragging on somebody? Can you ever stand outside yourself and watch yourself rag on somebody? As you all know, I have a sort of a middle linebacker personality. That's football team. And I'm not actually athletic, but I love to be participating in cheering for athletics. I have broken a rib that way. As a matter of fact, Phil McEwen broke my rib that way. We were excited over a touchdown, and it just happened. We were jumping up and down, and I heard it pop, and I framed my ankle badly, and I twisted my knee, and this is all just watching it on TV. So I have that, and I've always wanted my son and my husband, I always said, you ought to teach Jimmy how to throw a ball. You ought to teach him how to throw a ball. I can't throw a ball. I throw a ball like a sissy. I want you to teach him how to throw a ball. Dick said, I can't throw a ball. I said, well, I thought, learn, learn. It's not too late. It's not too late. He didn't know how to swim because he was a mad scientist when he was a kid, and he mixed some stuff together. It blew up in his pocket, and it scarred up, and he never learned how to swim. So I figured he could learn to throw a ball. something.
I never learned how to swim because I was never near the water to learn how to swim.
And they were poor. I heard this before. Very.
No, my family was too busy drinking, and they didn't have anything to do with kids.
Or water or nothing. Anyway.
Certainly nothing to do with water.
In there, and I'm watching this. I want to watch a ball game on TV or something. And they go, oh, no, it was basketball. Basketball. They said, don't. I told them, and I must say, I said, I'll never get into basketball. Never. Football was my game. I'll never get into basketball. Well, I was just watching the finals. I just watch the good basketball. Well, they're all moaning. Oh, no. Jimmy and Dick are moaning. They say, oh, no, she's into basketball now, So they're sitting there, slobs in my mind. They're sitting there. And so I got righteous feeling like I should tell them what to do. Just uncontrollable feeling. So I said, you guys, I should be, look at me.
The ultimate authority.
I'm 50, and look at, I said, I know, right, I'm sergeant in charge of fat. I know how to do it, I said, you guys are nothing but a bunch of couch potatoes. They're like, and I don't remember what Jimmy said, but it was something like, it's okay. It's all right, Mom. We just sort of hate you when you get like this. I think I know, right? I'm leading by example.
When she gets like that, I just wait 10 minutes because it goes away. It's not being stoic. It's just knowing it'll disappear. Things become less important after she says them.
Yeah. I think he just got me. But I wasn't listening. Anyway, we got it. One of the things that we have found is that we have to leave when it comes to a really important thing. The neat thing about us is that we have learned how to communicate, and we have learned how to laugh. He is the funniest thing. He taught me how to laugh. I've always had a good sense of humor, but I forgot how to use it. And when I was drinking, my muscles atrophied, and they got stiff, and I couldn't laugh because there wasn't anything funny. And our first Christmas, we had no money. Zilcho. We owed everybody. We had no money. And he said, and I'm saying, I was always very spoiled. I'm not getting any Christmas presents. I'm never going to get a Christmas present ever again. Guess I'll just have to go out and make a 12-step call or something dumb like that. And he says, I got a present for you. Well, you know how our minds are. I said, that so-and-so. Now he's got me a present, and I don't have him a present. So he's just doing it to make me look bad. Yeah. And I'm playing this in my mind. I'm not saying anything, but I'm playing this in my mind. So he said, just a minute. So he goes off in the bathroom, closes the door. It's the only door in the apartment except the front door. Is the bathroom. It's the only place you could gain privacy. So he goes into the bathroom, and he comes leaping out of the bathroom, stark naked, with a big red bow tied around his ding-ling. And he's singing, here comes Santa Claus. Now that's patient.
And I gave her that gift over and over again. The reason for saying this and the reason for talk. Life is for fun and for free, and that don't cost anything.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's fun.
It is fun, and it can be fun, and if it isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. Oh, dear Lord. Get a red bow, get a pumpkin, get something,
It's it's really like, she made a statement, if it isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. It's like staying sober, isn't it? It's like staying sober. If it isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. There's something wrong with what you're doing. And life should be fun. There should be joy in life. We should have a good time. And we should have a good time in our relationship with our partners, whatever it happens to be. We should have a good time. It's really for fun and for free. What can we do for fun and for free? What's good? You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to impress your partner by buying dozens of roses or diamond rings. Or where's Scott B? He used to be into that.
There he is.
He used to be in that before he met Mary.
Yeah.
Mary wants him to go back to it.
A little, anyway. Oh, one rose. One rose. Oh, there's nothing that'll bring a tear to a woman's eye like one red rose.
And that nothing makes a man feel any more simple and stupid than walking into a house carrying one rose in his hand. Yes. A bundle of them I can understand. One rose, it's just like a little boy saying, "Gosh, here I am, Mommy."
And don't we eat that up? Do we eat that up or not? Oh, the little boy. Third.
Well, I think that we ought to say something about courtship just for a moment. I know it's an old-fashioned word, and it sounds strange to young people because they believe that they're supposed to get into a relationship, and relationship involves some moaning and grunting and things like that. And, the guys that I sponsor, they say, well, I'm into a relationship, and I think, yeah, that's wonderful. It'd be kind of nice if you got to be friends first. It'd kind of be nice if you got to know each other first and know who likes what and where and why and when and all of those very simple things that a courtship has to do with it. A courtship obviously doesn't have to be long to be effective. One thing that's fortunate, being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and being an alcoholic and living with another one or dating one, I already know what she's like. I know more about her, possibly even than her, certainly more about her than her parents do.
Oh, yeah.
Much more. Because I know what her insides are like because they're like my insides. And I know what her insides need. And I know what my insides need. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I found out that I don't need someone to love me. I really don't need someone to love me. But I need somebody to love. I have love within me to give. And I need somebody to love. I don't need somebody to love me. If they love me in return, that's icing on the cake, baby. But I can love and just simply love.
He's better at it, too, than I am. Because he's very giving. And it took a long time for me to do that because I think I was more frightened, maybe. But I know that in our communication and in our courtship and being, in the beginning, I think we were like very careful with each other's feelings because we didn't know each other that well. But as we have grown in understanding and respect, I'm hooked on to you.
No.
We have been able to develop more of a sense of humor and to josh each other a lot more. He used to walk by me and slap me on the behind, and I never liked that. I never liked that because to me it was demeaning, and I at first wouldn't tell him about that because I was afraid that it would upset something. But eventually I became sure enough in our relationship that I would be able to say that to him, and he quit. He quit because he didn't want to do anything that was going to upset. It's okay to pass. Now, wait a minute. We got to get on with this,
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
Oh,
Three. Okay, you got to value the right of the opinion of your partner. You got to listen to it. You got to listen to what they have to say, and not with a closed mind, with an open mind. You'd be amazed how many times your partner has a better idea on how to bring something about than you do. And that goes for both sides. You got to feed each other your opinion, not demanding that your opinion be the only thing, not demanding that this has to be the way, but simply being able to express what you feel about the situation.
And keep an open mind. Keep an open mind rather than it always having to be my way or personally involved in the whole thing. Keep an open mind.
I got to start on this one. You started on the last one. Let's not fight.
The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Okay. I'm married to an alcoholic. She's married to an alcoholic. The only requirement for our membership in that partnership is a desire to stop drinking, because if she gets drunk, I pack her a suitcase, it goes on the front steps, and she goes out before it, and that's it. I am not made of Al-Anon material. Hey, she stuck around. I couldn't have put up with me drinking. As a matter of fact, it damn near killed me putting up with me drinking, much less trying to put up with somebody else drinking. I refuse to do that. I just will not do it. I won't tolerate a goddamn minute.
So really, the desire that we have to keep this thing together starts with each individual's desire to stay sober. To be an active part of the Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I don't know what would happen if we didn't do this. We just always have. We've always been active members. It's always been a basis for our relationship. We've always gone to a lot of meetings. We've always had sponsors. We've always done those things. So I don't know what it would be like if it wasn't that way. But I know what it's like now, and I don't want to change that.
Drinking on either part would impugn the integrity of the individual to such a point that there's no relationship exists. Nothing remains. There has to be integrity. I have to have my integrity. She has to have her integrity. And you can't cross those lines. If you cross over those lines, then it's trouble, and it's trouble city. And drinking for an alcoholic is crossing over those lines. It's giving yourself away piece by piece by piece all over again. And I've done that once, and I did it for years, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I am a valuable human being, and I deserve to live as a valid human being, and I will not live in any other fashion.
There's a lot of expectations that we have when we go into relationships of mine was the white charger, and that he was going to sweep me off my feet, and he was going to be this tremendous sex partner, because I knew so little about sex, and I really did. I knew a lot about, the other stuff, but I didn't know about clean and healthy sex. I knew about the other stuff. I knew about intimidation. I knew about backseats of cars and stuff like that, but I didn't know what a healthy sex relationship was all about. And he taught me, and we had some problems with that. We had a lot of problems with that, but through those sorts of things we learned. But I'll tell you something. There's a couple of things I remember that come up in this tradition. One of them is Clancy has a great story about a couple. The first few months that they're together or that they have this relationship, their hands touch across the breakfast table. And it's like sparks, and the lights go on, and the whole world comes alive. And
you take the salt, dear. Go ahead.
Shivering, and here, you have the salt. And then after several months of being married, and they're sitting at the same breakfast table, and they reach for the salt, and their hands touch, and one of them says, "Pass me the goddamn salt." It's a question of how you are going to relate to each other. You can't expect it to be marvelous all the time. You've got to expect sometimes that it's going to be bad, but it doesn't mean it's going to be that it's over. That's what I always thought. I thought, something little bit goes wrong, and it's over. It's over. He hates me. Or I hate him, which is even worse, and we might as well get a divorce. And I used to say that to him. I used to say it. He never said it because he'd had the experience. But I used to say to him, I remember one time I got so mad at him. Physical violence is a never, acceptable. But he doesn't get physically violent, because if he did, he'd break
more.
both my kneecaps and, string me over a wall or something. He has these visions in his head what he'd do. But he's never been physically violent, but I don't have visions. I just plant one on your kisser. And so he turned away from whatever it was that I was saying, which always makes you mad. You want to argue. You don't want somebody to walk out of the room. So I planted both of my fists in his back, and he turned around, and I knew I'd had it. Boy, I knew it. He said, "Don't ever do that again." And I said, "We just might as well get a divorce." He said, "Don't ever say that again unless you mean it." And I knew he meant it. And I didn't want to hurt him. I was just trying to get my way.
Threats don't work. You don't have to let threats work. My feeling about that is, if you're threatening to get a divorce, get a divorce. Pack your clothes and get out. Or I'll pack mine and get out. I don't care. Yeah. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be where I'm not wanted. And so if you tell me you want a divorce, that's telling me you don't want me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be there. And I'm not going to be there, because I am a valuable, valid human being. And if you don't want me, somebody does.
Yeah.
Me. I want me.
It's the old hand on the doorknob syndrome. It's somebody's always got their hand on the doorknob. I'm leaving if I don't get this. I'm leaving if I don't get that. I'm leaving if this doesn't work out. And they've always got their hand on the doorknob. Can't live like that. You cannot live without the faith, at least some of the time, and hopefully a lot of the time in your spouse or your partner. You have to have trust and faith.
Okay. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. And in that, we're talking about each partner has a right to autonomy as well, except any actions that they would take that would affect the family in a derogatory or a negative sense. And that is to say, I can't do anything that would affect Peggy in a negative way, or my son Jim in a negative way. I have to consider others before I take an action. And in considering others, then I can make an action based on that, not an action based on what I want to do.
There's another thing that comes into this, too, and that is this. I don't know how you are. I don't know how Debbie is, but I have a feeling she's like me. When I have a pigeon who demands my attention, who demands my love, I retreat. It's like somebody... It's like they go, how kids, when you get on the phone, they always come and they go like that, and they want, and it's always when you're on the phone, they always try, and I feel like, and when they get too close to me, when they start crowding me, what they're doing is they're demanding that I love them on their terms. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. What it makes me feel like doing is saying, go away from me. And it's like with I cannot, and I God knows I try. Tell me that you love me. Prove it. Prove it. How can one human being do that? How can you prove to another human being you love them? If they believe it, they believe it. If they don't believe it, they don't believe it. And there is nothing that can be done in between. You cannot prove those things. You can do things that show love, because all of these things are action. Having a good relationship is an action thing. But I cannot place myself in front of him and say, "Do you love me?" Because I'm inviting this. He says, "Yes, I love you." And I say, "You don't act like you love me. You don't look like you love me. You didn't say that in a loving way." Then he say, "What do I have to say to you to prove that I love you?" "I don't know, but you didn't say the right things." I mean, it's like living with a raving lunatic. He's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. You cannot demand that someone prove to you that you're loved. You have to grow in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to where you have your own feelings of self-worth, and then you will know, because it's like, when you have self-worth, it's like opening a door, and people can walk in. But if you don't open the door, nobody's going to get in. Nobody can love, nobody can prove if your doors are closed. And it's opening that.
Well, I think it's really very necessary not to demand anything. Now, I don't have any demands. We have certain things, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but we have certain things that we do around the house that, Peggy generally cooks the meals that are cooked. We have our business at home, and I come upstairs for lunch frequently, and that's been almost 5 years. In 5 years, she fixed my lunch once.
Yeah, I don't do
Once, and I remember it.
I don't do breakfast.
Doesn't do lunch, doesn't do breakfast, doesn't do lunch.
I do dinner.
4 days a week. What the hell?
5 days. Well,
4 or 5.
I don't know.
Well, what difference does it make? And the reason why I say that,
Counting.
Is I can pour cereal in a bowl. I'm a grown man. I know how to do that. I can make a sandwich. I can warm up a can of chili. I can do that just as well as she can. I can take care of myself. The secret is that I have learned one very simple thing. I can survive without her. Thank you very much. I can. I can survive without her. Thank you very much. I prefer to live with her, but I can survive without her. If she
that's important.
bolts tomorrow, I'm not going to say I'm going to be happy about it, but I'll tell you, it won't be long. It won't be long.
No, I accept.
Hey, what am I going to do, mourn?
If he were to die, I would be very unhappy about it, but I would also be okay. I'd be okay in the long run because I have you. And I remember one time when he said this to me, and I thought I was devastated until I thought about it with my heart. He said, I love you more than any woman in the world, but loving you isn't enough. And I thought, let's see who's not enough. That was my reaction inside. But I knew what he was talking about because I knew that loving him was not enough, that I had to love you. I had to love you. This is my life. This alcoholism, this recovery from alcoholism is my life. And I would have to get on with my life. And that's important. It's not something we would choose, but it's important that we know we could.
Let's think about it just simply on a practical basis. Just a very simple, practical, economic basis. Peggy is one person. You're hundreds. What's more important, hundreds or one? Hundreds. It's more important to love you and pay attention to you than I love her and pay attention to her.
Although it goes hand in hand. Because I find that if I love you, I love him better. I don't know how that's strange, but that's true. When I'm willing to love you and go out of my way for you, my relationship with him is enhanced. It's so hard when you're selfish. That selfish, self-centered thing that I hear so many, it's always, what about me? What about my rights? What about me? And I always get this little answer in my head. Yeah, well, what about you? Because AA's taught me that it isn't me, it's you. It's you. You're important. Because somehow my development as a human being depends upon my willingness to love you. That's the way it's been.
Don't humor your partner. That's denigrating. That's putting them down. You just listen to what they have to say and go on and do your own thing, regardless of what they have to say, and saying, oh, sure, and then just go do your thing, like we did when we were drinking. And then you come back and they say, did you do that? And I say, yeah, I did it. Well, didn't you know I didn't want you to do that? Yeah, but I wanted to do it. Why? You acted as if you weren't going to do it, and then you did it anyway. Why humor me that way? Don't humor me. Don't play with me. Don't play games with people. People don't like being played with that way.
And boy, have we played games. There is not a woman in this room who does not know how to play them and play them real good. Oh, hey, I'm only speaking from women. I know you guys do too. You're just not quite as subtle.
Yeah. I think a good example of that is sex. You know, giving you a little reward because you're a good boy, and saying no because you're a bad boy.
Yeah.
You know, the most stupid thing about doing that is it's self-denial at the same time. I mean, it's really stupid.
It is stupid. What are you laughing at, John? Okay. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. I think we've pretty much covered that because we've talked about being AA members and Al-Anon members, or not us in particular, but those of you who are Al-Anon members, being AA members first. You know, that we have to be AA members first, and that's the message that we carry, that we are recovering through these particular principles. And one of the things that I'm reminded of in this too is that, you know, I don't know how you are, but I can always find everything negative. I mean, there's not a negative thing that you do that I can't spot right away, just right off. You know, I mean, whether it be squeezing the toothpaste from the bottom, which I consider stupid, or whether doing it logically, which is to just punch it in the middle like I do. You know, just
I got an answer.
first serve.
I got an answer to that. You have 2 tubes of toothpaste. She has hers, and I have mine.
And
I squeeze mine from the bottom.
He squeezes this from the bottom. We especially got this commode built in our bathroom that has 2 separate drawers so we can have our own little toothpaste, so we don't ever have to fight about that again. So we fight
Every now and
powders.
then I run out of toothpaste, and I have to use hers, and it's I almost feel dirty about it.
Yeah. So you
But,
said,
you know the thing that you really got to do is to recognize the good things your partner does. To recognize the good things your
and
partner.
tell them.
Hey, that was a good meal. Hey, you cleaned up the place. You're wearing a new dress. You're looking nice tonight. It's nice to come home and see you looking nice. I shave every day. I don't like to shave. I don't like to shave any day, but I like the way it feels when I have shaved. I feel clean. I feel dirty when I don't shave. I shave because it makes me feel good, not necessarily because of the appearance that it has or doesn't have, but it makes me feel clean, and it also gives a clean appearance to you, and it makes me attractive to you. And so I just simply shave every day. It's no big deal. I shower every day so that I'm not offensive. It's very simple. Sometimes more than once a day.
And it's nice to be, you know, just even to give, I call him attaboy. No, it's an attaboy. It's a little positive stroke, you know, that says, hey, you're my guy. You know, you're okay with me. You're good. I appreciate the things that you're doing. And I forget far too often to do that. I forget far too often. I remember one time he came home and we were eating dinner, and they got through with it, and they had made some comments about it and everything, and, you know, like, this tastes funny, and what does it have, carrots in it or what, or, you know, something like that. And I said, you know, I cook dinner every night, and nobody ever says, thank you, dear Peggy, for cooking dinner every night. So, not to be put down, he perked up and he said, you know, I've been going to work for 35 years. And nobody ever said to me when I came in the door, thank you, little Dickie, for going to work for 35 years. And then he grinned. And I knew what he was saying. You know, I knew I didn't need that.
Just do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
You don't need to have credit for doing what you're supposed to do. You don't need credit for doing what you're supposed to do. But it's pleasing to your partner to tell them that you're proud of them for doing what they're supposed to do on such a long and consistent basis. And, you know, I'm proud of my wife because she has consistently been a good wife and consistently been a good housekeeper, consistently been a good mother, consistently been a good friend. And I'm proud of her. I really am. I had something occur to me a number of years ago. Peggy got elected to some office in AA. And this gal came up to me and said, well, how do you feel about that? I said, I think it's great. She said, well, aren't you jealous? I said, no. Why should I be jealous? I'm pleased that you got it. Peggy has an ability to do some things that I don't have, and I'm very pleased for her. I'm simply pleased for her. It's nice to be pleased for your mate. I'm pleased, and I think that she'll serve well. Well, you're not jealous? No, not jealous at all. I got things to do myself. And it's really simple. It allows me to do my thing too, doesn't it? Allows me to do what I can do.
I know it seems like we're only halfway through, but we're really not. We're on the downhill, guys. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. I think there's only really one area in there that I would like to talk about, and that is the money, property, and prestige. I was raised kind of with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a lot of money. I had a lot of attention. I had a lot of care. I was a spoiled brat, really, basically. And this poverty bit was hard for me to take. And we were rather poverty-stricken for a while because we had so many bad debts to pay off and so many alimony and child support payments to make and that kind of thing. So we were kind of poor. And we had the greatest time when we were poor. We really had the greatest time because when you have things that money buys, then you have to take care of the things, and pretty soon it becomes a job to take care of the things.
The things own you instead of you owning them.
Instead of you owning the things. And so it was a lot simpler. I'm not turning any money down or nothing. Don't think that. But I got into money, property, and prestige. And Dick's family was what I would call decadent Southern aristocracy. Not so much.
That makes sense.
Yeah, alcoholic, decadent Southern aristocracy. He has a line that goes back. His grandfather, great-grandfather owned slaves, and they had plantations, and we're not sure how the family line all came about, but well, at any rate, he was from decadent Southern aristocracy. And his dad was
Them damn Yankees took all the money.
Yeah, all of the damn Yankees took the money. But anyway, his family had been reduced by alcoholism. My family had not been. And I considered myself to be better than his family. My family seemed to be better than his family. And I hate saying that because that, to me, that's an ugly part of me. But that's the way I felt when I first met him, was that I was better than he was. And that somehow or another, that I would put up, I could perhaps raise him to my standards. It was yucky. It was really yucky. And he taught me through his patience and through his really nobility under crisis. We had a child that was born dead, and after we'd been married, after Jimmy, and Jimmy came up to me one time when he was just a little boy, and he said, this was right after this had happened, and he was very small, he didn't understand, and he said, you promised me a baby brother for Christmas. And Dick just looked at me, and he put his arm out, and he put it around me, and he just said, well, it just didn't work out that way. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it. He showed me nobility, and I could recognize it. It's not that I think a lot of it is in the recognition, in being able to recognize what those things are in the people that are around us, that we can say, attaboy, thank you. And those two words are so important. Please remember to say thank you, because the closer you come into relationship with people, the more necessary does politeness become. Because the more you know them, the more you know about them, and you gotta accept them for what they are. So politeness and thank you. If I don't say thank you for some of the things that happen during the day to my God, then I feel spiritually bereft. If I don't say thank you to him for some of the things that he does that I know he goes out of his way to do, then I am socially bereft, if you will.
So what you have to learn to do, and what we all have to learn to do and recommit ourselves on a daily basis, is to do what's in front of you to do those things that you have committed yourself to do. If you've committed yourself to be a married partner, then be a married partner and work in partnership and work in harmony with the other person. Assist and help them, be a part of their life, let them be a part of your life, share your life with them, and encourage them to share their life with you. And don't ever feel that because someone in your family has accomplished something or isn't something or whatever it is, don't ever feel that that affects you. You know, what Peggy is doesn't affect me. It doesn't make me less of a man or more of a man. It doesn't affect me. What I do makes me what I am, not what she does.
We are not reflections of each other. We are simply not reflections. Dick is very outspoken. And sometimes Jim McKernan knows it. Jim McKernan and I and Terry Ling, we used to sit on the edge of our chairs whenever he'd say something because we knew he was going to insult somebody. He seemed to take a pride in it, and we were just mortified because we were feeling as though we were reflections of him. Somehow that was going to come off on him. And I learned a long time ago that that isn't healthy and that I have to separate myself from that because I am myself.
So there's a fellow that calls the house every now and then, and out of politeness, he talks to me, but he talks to me like I'm Mr. Peggy.
Yeah.
I mean, he really does. And he called several days ago, and I was telling Peggy, I said, I always get the feeling every time I talk to this guy that he kind of talks to me like I'm Mr. Peggy or something. And she said, yes. She said, I think so, but he thinks of me as being innocuous. He thinks of me as being innocuous, non-hostile. And he thinks of me as being hostile.
So he tries to stay away.
So he stays away from me, and he would rather talk to her. And I said, innocuous wadding over here. And I said, are you innocuous wadding? She said, no, but he thinks so.
Yeah, you know better. One of the things my pigeons always get tired of hearing me say is take care of your side of the street. God, they get sick of me saying that. Because the other side of the street for people, taking care of his side of the street looks so tempting. He uses talcum powder. And I got so thrilled the other day because I found his favorite kind of talcum powder. And they hardly make it anymore. It's Menon's. So if you ever find any, buy me a talcum.
Come on.
Menon's talcum powder. Square bottle, green printing. Very seldom can I found it. But anyway, the thing that irritates me, that's great. I loved it. I brought it home, bought the only thing they had in the store, brought it home. Look at here, I got, my favorite talcum powder. So I was thrilled. But he throws it all over the bathroom. He just, like this, And when you walk out of the bathroom, it leaves little feet, across the carpet there. And
yeah, but let me tell you something.
Hard to.
When I take my T-shirt at night and I smell that talcum powder, it just smells so good. It's worth it.
Like a little baby. But it's hard to take care of your side of the street when you got to walk after him and smudge out these footprints on the carpet. You're always doing that.
I've never heard her say that when we're in bed, well, why don't you get up and take a shower? You smell bad.
No, he never has. He always smells like men and talcum powder.
He ain't all dumb.
Yeah. So they get tired of me saying, take care of your side of the street. But God, it's important. It's important to keep your side of the street clean. Because, it's fun to meddle on somebody else's side of the street because it's not personal. You're over there messing with their stuff. But if you're on your side, then you got to clean up your side of the street. And that's hard to do. And they don't, they get tired of me saying it, but it's very true. And it's good for the relationship, too, I'll tell you. Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. One thing I did want to say, this is so true, and I heard it just recently. I almost freaked when I heard it because, it's, you think you've heard everything, and then you hear something in a different way. It talks about being emotionally self-supporting and how you need to be emotionally self-supporting, how you need to stand on your own 2 feet emotionally as well as other ways. I always knew how I could help other people. I always knew to help, that was, I couldn't fix myself, but I wanted to fix you. I'm very Al-Anon in that way. And this lady said, and it's Mary Pearl, and she said this, and it just blew my head off practically. She said, if we insist on doing things for people that they can do for themselves, we ensure their failure to ever be able to do them. God, it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I'd been doing that all my life. I didn't think they could even get up out of bed right, without, I used to make lunches for them, and then I'd get resentful because I made lunches. I did do lunch, too. I forgot about that. I did lunch when they weren't big enough to butter their own. I did lunch then, and I used to get mad at them for eating. I didn't want to make lunch, so I'd get resentful about eating. That's not
self-support. Self-support has to do with being a man, or being a woman. Be what you are. Don't be diminished by whatever you feel. When I'm feeling bad about something, I don't want Peggy to come over to me and say, "Oh, you poor boy," because that just makes me want to kill. It gives me a license to kill at that point. When I'm feeling bad, she'll say, "What's the matter?" I say, "Well, I'm not feeling too good about this." She'll say, "Oh," and she goes away and leaves me alone. Because my healing is not going to come from someone that I'm emotionally involved with. My healing is going to come from my sponsor, God as I understand it. That's where my healing is going to come from. It's going to come because I take some action, not because someone takes some action on my behalf. I have got to be a man. And as my sponsor so lovingly says, if you can't be a man, act like a man. God, I hate to hear that. Jesus.
If you can't be a woman, you got to act like a woman. If you don't know what a woman acts like, ask a woman. Because there's plenty of them around.
You don't cling. You don't depend upon the other person to be emotionally, to make you whole.
You can't. They're going to fail. They're going to fail. It's like demanding love. It doesn't fit. Our lumps don't fit your holes or whatever. I mean, that sounds kind of sexual, but I don't mean it that way. I mean emotionally. We can't heal one another in that sense. We need to go outside for that.
Peg read I just wanted to fill in there because we're kind of skipped over the seventh step, the seventh tradition, which is really being self-supporting, doing your thing and doing it well and doing it proudly and being proud of what you are. And being self-supporting and earning a buck or two yourself so that you feel like you're making a contribution if that's appropriate. But when we're talking about non-professionalism, which is the eighth tradition, I am not a professional father. I am not a professional husband. I am not a professional fixer. I am of things. I can't do plaster walls and that sort of thing. I don't know how to do it. I'm not professional. Plumbing is beneath my capabilities.
Capabilities is right. He can't even get under the sink hardly.
But I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional. So what does this say? What does it say? Our service centers may employ special workers. So you get an automobile mechanic for the automobile. You get a wall plasterer for the wall. You don't try to do something that you can't do. I don't pretend to be able to do all things, and I can't. I can't pretend to be the best father in the world, nor can I pretend to be the best husband in the world. But I can be the father that I can be, and I can be the husband that I can be to the best of my ability. I can do it to the best of my ability. And it doesn't make me any less because it doesn't measure up to her standards, whatever her ideal.
You each have to have you've got to have your own standards based on the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's basically what it comes down to. 9 says, as such, AA ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. So I think the easiest way to put that is there are some things that people fight over. They have no reason to fight over. It's like the checkbook. Find out who's better at having the checkbook. If you don't both have a checkbook, then let the person do the checkbook who's got the interest to do it and who's got the expertise to do it. Because I'm one of those kind of, Dick is the sort of person, he just says, well, if it sort of lumps out at the end of the month, it's okay. He doesn't even care how much is in there. He says, they'll let me know if there's not enough. I mean, I got to know right.
I just moved some rocks from this place to that place. It's no big deal.
It here and there and everywhere. But, okay, that's book. I do checkbooks good. I don't do investments good. He does investments good. He does real good with that because he's playing in the abstract and he's playing with big numbers and he's not playing with $7.65, which I'm playing with. I'm better at minutia. He's better at grandiose things. Wonder why.
Okay. So a family organization really has to be pliable, though, doesn't it? If we're talking about investments, I want Peggy to know what the investments are and how to handle it and so on and so forth if I'm not there. Okay? I know how to balance a checkbook. I really do. But I also know where my will is, and I know where her will is, and I know where the key to the safety deposit box is. I know how to pay the bills. I know what the process is. I know all of those things. And she knows all of those things. So in her absence, I can do them, or in my absence, I can do them. I'm going to live forever, so I better learn them. Well, maybe for another day.
Yeah.
But it's important that the partners, everybody knows what's going on.
Communicate, for God's sake. Communicate about those sorts of things, about finances and about charging.
When we were first married, we didn't have much money, and we made a deal. You don't buy anything costing over a certain amount without conferring with your partner first, period. No matter if it's on sale at that instant, and it's never going to be on sale again.
Ever.
No blue light specials, at Kmart, none of that. You have to confer with your partner because otherwise you'll overspend, and then there won't be enough for us. And there has to be enough for us.
One of the things is, we hear this in AA and couples all the time. My car, my bank account, my checkbook, my this, my that, my... It's not, if you marry somebody, if you're with somebody, it's our checkbook, our bank account, our car, our house, our kids. It's our. If you talk that way, maybe you'll start to feel that way. Because if you talk my, that's a separation from. This is our deal. It's our deal. Okay, we got 2 more things to do and then we're done. We got carried away in the beginning, and we always do this, and we know you've been very patient. But there are some areas under 10, which Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues and public controversy and that sort of thing. Basically, I want to say this one thing. When you get into the heat of battle, and all of you who have been married or have a relationship have been in the heat of battle, when in doubt, shut up. I have a sign on my wall. Because I'll tell you something. There's some things that I know how to say that hurt so bad, and they can never be taken back. They might be forgiven, but they can never be forgotten. And that's hard. And if I can prevent them from being said by zipping my lip, I'm really better off. Because, when I say things in the heat of an argument, generally speaking, I say them for one purpose, to get even.
I say them to get ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the time?
Yeah, we're almost out.
Okay. When you met her or him, whichever the case may be, it happened in a very strange sort of a way. It's not strange, it's just the way it happened. And what happens is it became a physical relationship first. And I don't mean sex when I say physical relationship, because I can go to an AA meeting or anywhere, and I can see a man that I like and a man that I admire, and hear them speak, see what they look like, see how they're dressed, see what they pay attention.
I'm paying attention.
And hear their voice and like what they say, like the tone of their voice, and I become attracted to them. And that's a physical attraction. It's a physical attraction. And if I really like them physically in that respect, then I'll go up and I'll shake their hand and I'll introduce myself, and perhaps we'll sit down and we'll have a cup of coffee. And we'll have a cup of coffee and we'll talk about things, and we'll have lunch next week and we'll go to meetings together or whatever it happens to be. And that then is a mental relationship. And if we do this on an ongoing basis, we become friends. And that's a spiritual relationship. Every relationship between human beings is the same way. It starts out physical, mental, and spiritual. Now, if you think for a moment that if you're having a little bit of trouble in your marriage or your relationship with somebody, that you're going to heal it by talking about it, you're wrong. You heal it by being an attractive human being, a physically attractive human being, and acting like it, and touching and shaking hands, making them aware of the fact that you care physically. If you do that, and if you reassure them in a physical sense, the first thing you know is they'll start talking to you, and you develop a mental or intellectual relationship. And as you do that, you'll talk out your differences, and gradually you will redevelop a spiritual relationship where you like each other. But you've got to start out with the physical. It's just like the first 3 steps. It is the first 3 steps, which are certainly physical, mental, and spiritual. Mental, emotional, whatever you want to call it.
And that can be true in courtship. It can be true in any relationship that you have those 3 elements. You can be friends.
We don't compete.
Mm-mm.
We don't compete.
Who's smartest? Who's dumbest sometimes? Who's maddest? Who's rightest? It's what difference does it make? In the long run, what difference does it make? It's no.
Peggy does something and feels good about herself. It makes it much more pleasant for me to be around her because she's a much more pleasant person to be around. I want her to be successful. I really do, because it makes her happy. And if she's happy, it sure makes it easy for me to be around. I want for her. I really do. I really care, and I care for her to be successful at whatever she does because it pleases her. And if it pleases her, it pleases me.
Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. And I think one of the things that I have assigned people that I sponsor to do, especially when they have a resentment toward their husband or something, is not to go and discuss that resentment with him, because when that happens, a lot of inventory taking goes on, and it usually ends up in a brouhaha than ever before. But I go through the standard procedure of having them pray for him and so forth, but I also like for them to do something for them and not get caught. Do something nice for them. Anything, like wiping up talcum powder, for example. Just cleaning it up a little bit. Erasing the footprints as they come out of the door. That kind of thing. He doesn't know I do it, but boy, it makes me feel good. I done a goodie for Dick. It's that kind of thing. And not get caught. Now,
what if I walk by her chair and her coffee cup is there and empty? I can pick it up and take it in the kitchen.
Get me a cup of coffee, or take my empty cup in there.
And put it in the dishwasher. What if she gets in a rush and puts some things on the dishwasher and has to on the dish counter and has to run out? And I go in there, I can put them in the dishwasher.
It's kindness and consideration.
It's no big deal. It doesn't diminish me, human being, to put things in a dishwasher or to run the dishwasher or to take the dishes out and put them on the shelf. Except I don't really know where they go.
Yes, you do, too. He's just kidding. He does it all the time. But, we don't have to figure out in anonymity, we don't have to figure out whose turn it is to do a good deed. Have you ever played that game? Oh, I did this for you, so you got to do this for me. Oh, I did this, I sacrificed for you. Well, you got to sacrifice. Where's my sacrifice? Come on, give me my bread.
What is partnership? You know, people get together in a partnership because of and by themselves, they are one. They're one thing. They have a partner so that they can be in joy with another person.
That relationship.
In joy with another person. And so in order to have joy in the relationship, you have to give. You have to give of yourself. And it's no big deal. It's really very simple.
The last one really talks about being selfless. It talks about self-sacrifice in a sort of a different way. It is not having to have my rights always. That doesn't mean that I don't stand tall in the relationship. It just means that I don't always have to have my way. And thank God, because it's like Dick has said many times, if he ever really ran an AA meeting the way he wanted to run it, nobody else would come.
Yeah, but I'd be there every week.
We'd be there every week, but nobody else would be there. And so basically the spiritual foundation of a really attractive relationship is to think of others, to be considerate of others, to give each other a break, for God's sake. Give yourselves a break and lighten up. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening and all the rest.